I would like to now give the floor to Ashish Kulkarni. He's the executive officer from Elements AI and a good partner for WCMR. Ashish is going to present on the AI-powered resilience for urban heat. So he's going to be talking about that specific topic. And without further ado, I invite Ashish to continue with his presentation. Over to you, Ashish.
Thank you, Ricardo, and thank you everyone for joining us today. Let me quickly share my screen and so that everyone can see my presentation. All right. So, good day, everyone, and thank you for joining. I'm here to talk to you about something that doesn't get enough attention in the crisis management circles, in specific heat. Like Mr. Kamal Kishore mentioned, that it's a silent killer, and many a times gets unnoticed. So, over the next few minutes, I will walk you through how AI is changing the way cities anticipate, prepare for, and respond to heat waves. I'm going to show you an impact modeling for the city of Abu Dhabi that we performed using our application called Urban Heat Governance AI, followed by a live scenario we have built for the city of Nagpur, one of India's hottest cities, and using three modules from our Alert 360 platform, and namely Urban Heat Governance AI, ALERTSim, and Alert Crisis Management. So let us quickly start with why Nagpur is the right city to talk about. Nagpur's heat problem is not a one-off. In May 2013, the city recorded its all-time high of 47.9 degrees centigrade. And since then, Vidarbha regularly sees temperatures above 45 degrees, and heat alerts have become close to an annual routine. To its credit, Nagpur helped shape India's first regional health heat action plan back in 2016. Just want to check if the slide moved to the next one, or is it still showing the earlier slide?
It is the second slide.
It is the second slide.
Okay, it moved.
Good, good. So to give Nagpur its credit, it helped shape India's first regional heat action plan back in 2016, much before the state came up with its statewide plan. But a plan on paper is only as good as the coordination behind it. So responding to a heat wave would not only require, municipal corporation, health departments, power utilities, metros and other actors to, to perform in a coordinated manner. You would also need to understand where the real impact of extreme heat lies. Which ward would have the most effect, depending on what type of housing people have, because depending on the type of housing, the effects of heat vary throughout the city. So this gap can be addressed using AI. So, and this is what we would like to demonstrate today through our three different modules of our platform. Now, when we think about AI in crisis and emergency management, we think of it as a loop. So anticipate means seeing the risk before it becomes a crisis. Prepare means testing the response against that risk before it is real. And respond is the live coordination once the crisis hits. Improve means taking what was learned and feeding it back into the next scenario. So the loop gets sharper every time it runs. And this is our concept behind our Alert 360 platform. So with Urban Heat Governance AI, you can do impact modeling. The information about what type of hazards are available is quite it's quite out there in the public literature. But where the impacts would happen can be modeled using AI, connecting it to geo AI satellite imagery, connecting it using AI to identify where housing is more vulnerable, where are the most vulnerable population within the city. So using multiple techniques, we can identify which wards and what areas would be most affected? Where would the medical infrastructure fail or lack if there is a heat wave, and the what kind of stresses it would apply to power grid, to medical infrastructure? These are some of the use cases that we can use AI for helping us with. And finally, the other two aspects, which is prepare and respond. So ALERTSim can help us simulate scenarios based on different types of heat waves, different types of challenges. And we can test our emergency response plans, our heat wave action plans. And alert crisis management can actually help us manage the crisis when it does occur. So let me start with showing you our research on urban heat governance. So this was a research that we developed, and here what we did was we used Abu Dhabi as the city from where, which we studied. So this analytical framework, we set up an analytical framework starting with urban heat observation. So we used heat maps as the foundational layer and identified within Abu Dhabi city which are the areas most affected by heat. So these green spots, so we have used Google Earth and publicly available databases for telling us, the temperature data from past so many years. Layer two was an exposure intelligence where we identified residential exposure zones, worker exposure zones, because that is one of the critical areas, a critical population within Abu Dhabi. And the housing for workers varies, is slightly different from what you would have for others. And we also identified mixed exposure zones. So when we talk about worker exposure zones, it covers not only the housing, but it also covers the place of work where usually workers would be exposed to more urban heat. It could be construction, it could be factories with aluminum sheds. So the worker exposure zones gives is one of the most vulnerable exposure zones for the city of Abu Dhabi. Each location would have a different exposure intelligence that would have to be built upon. And we mapped all of them together. So you have the worker exposure zone, you have the mixed, that is residential plus worker exposure map, and the residential exposure map. Further, we developed, added another layer which talks about the priority heat zones, which zones need to have, where we need to pay more priority to, depending on the impact it would have, vulnerability it would have. We calculated the cooling demand index for, that was our layer four. And this is the map that we get for the cooling demand. So, you have a yellow, red, maroon gradient that shows where is the highest cooling demand based on the vulnerabilities and the risk. It also tells us about the infrastructure stress indicators, the composite infrastructure risk, and finally gives us a heat map or a vulnerability map of where would be the critical infrastructure risk within Abu Dhabi. Now, this was a research project that we had done internally. Now, you can think of how such an application would be beneficial if cities were able to use a AI model which is kept alive based on accurate data, based on updated data, how much it would help them plan for the next heat wave. So this was one example. Next, I would like to show you. Let me share my screen. From here, I would like to take you to a live demo, and from Abu Dhabi, we will move to Nagpur. And let's think about what will happen. What if a heat wave hits Nagpur or is about to hit Nagpur in the next 72 hours? So how are we going to prepare for this? So for this, I will take you to our next platform, which is ALERTSim, which helps us to simulate scenarios. So let me show you, some of the features of this application and how it can help us in simulating heat risks. So we have a configurator here, and similar configurators can be built for different governments. So I can select the region here. So let me say South Asia, India, and say Nagpur. It tells me that it has a mixed urban-rural transition. That is a good, that's the affected population especially due to heat waves. I can select various different hazard types. So for our event today, we'll select heat wave. I can decide what severity level do I want the event to have, and what is the onset type. Is it a rapid onset? Is it a slow build over a couple of days? Is it a sustained, over several weeks? So let's say slow build. And I can build a scenario, and this is currently connected to AI models where for each of these configurators, we have provided public data sets from where it simulates or generates the AI scenario. So I'll not do a live scenario generation because it would take quite some time to get loaded. But for the uh, presentation, I have saved a scenario. Let me show that to you. So this is for Nagpur heat wave warning. So this is an exercise type, is a tabletop exercise. And this data is based on Nagpur publicly available data. We have used Google Map databases. We have used IMD temperature historical data. We have used we have scrapped through Google to understand where the different locations are within Nagpur, where the resources are placed. So currently we are only using publicly available databases. If this were to be implemented in a government, the data quality would significantly increase. So what it gives you is an exercise design studio where it has where it has developed several injects. So your inject could be in the form of an information, or it could be a decision point, it could be a complication. It has given what the inject should be, what is the expected action from the participants who are participating in the scenario, and what should be the evaluation criteria. How would you judge whether the objective of your heat wave action plan has been met or not? And it also provides us with a AI generated timeline for the various injects. Now you also have a participant room where participants can join in through a video conference, audio video conference, and test out this scenario. So a facilitator would inject a situation within the participant room, and people are expected to assess the risk, make decisions, understand what they need to do. That could include, filling out, doing risk assessments using forms, using checklists, etc., as per your heat wave action plan. So this simulator can be used to test and validate your plans. Now, from here, I would like to move to respond. I would like to move to respond. In respond, we have alert crisis management, where the question moves from what if it hits to when it has hit, how are we coordinating? So it provides us with a live incident dashboard, a multi-agency coordination, and resource tracking. I have created, let me show you the application now. So I have created a Nagpur specific incident. So alert crisis management is an incident management system. So I have created a heat wave emergency for Nagpur. What it provides you is an incident overview, a dashboard from where you can monitor all the actions that are being taken. Actually, before coming here, let me tell you something more interesting first. So the incidents work on playbooks. So you can create AI generated playbooks based on your emergency response plans, the hazards that you have, the emergencies that you have. You can allow the application to generate these playbooks for various different crises and emergencies, or you can upload your own playbooks. And when an incident is created, when an incident is created, the application follows the playbook and starts taking the initial actions by sending out, creating the tasks, creating the immediate action steps, etc. But it does not, does not assign these tasks on its own. It will ask a incident commander or the officer to take the decision whether he wants to take the action or not. So you have an incident overview. You can add maps to it. You can have weather data. You can connect it to CCTV cameras. So various options are available. You also have a command dashboard where in one glance you can see the incident status, the life cycle timeline, the items that need attention, tasks that need to be progressed, communication alerts, etc. You have response actions being generated by AI and by people. If the AI generates it, it asks the operator to provide his approval before developing these, before it moves ahead. And so you have an entire crisis management application, which is where AI has been used to reduce the cognitive load and to make sure that every action is being tracked and managed properly. With this, let me come back to the presentation. Now, what we have built here is not just an alerting tool. We have this concept of it being a closed loop. So right from anticipation to prepare to respond and improve, it has to be a closed loop. So all our applications come up with after action captures that feeds into the next cycle. And finally, I would like to leave you with one thought that, one platform for every hazard, which manages right from anticipate all the way up to improve. You can imagine the kind of data that can be generated through such a platform and how powerful it can be in managing our risks. So having said that, I would like to thank all of you for listening to me so attentively. And if you have any questions, feel free to put it in the chat. I would love to answer your questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ashish, very much. Thank you for this very interesting presentation showing how the AI aspects can be used in support of better anticipation and better preparedness and simulation to increase the level of readiness, which is quite insightful. So thank you very much.